piece of trivia I wanted to get your thoughts on, rather impromptu. So famously, the first advertisement that went up on the web was in October 17th in 1994. Do you happen to know who the advertiser was and where that ad was placed?
So it actually, I need to know this because I've heard this trivia point recently, but it was actually AT&T. And the woman who actually worked on it, I'm completely spacing. She was talking about it because she recently retired. And I know that she rides a lot of bikes and she's a friend of mine on Facebook, and I'm completely spacing. If she's listening, she's going to slap me that I don't know the answer to this question. So
No,
please, please save me here.
No, I don't mean to put you in a spot in that regard. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. It, of course, was AT&T. And I think that she also worked with Jim Spiros at the time, who was on it. And it was on Wired, on hotwired.com back in 1994. And it famously, depending on who you ask, it got somewhere between a 44% and 85% click-through rate on that ad, which of course is not what anyone sees these days. But
I'm glad we're still working against that benchmark.
Yep, exactly. Well, great. Yeah, let me, as a matter of introduction, let me, if I can, I'd love to introduce myself. So I'm Ted Smith. I'm the head of enterprise sales for Audigent. Audigent is a first-party data platform and a next-gen DMP. We work very closely with leading publishers in the world, including Newly, Food 52, but you also look at Condé Nast, you look at Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, whole slate of premium publishers, and we basically originate data from them in a fully compliant way and make those audience data sets actionable for marketers such as yourself in new ways. So excited to have this conversation kind of about some of the creative applications of that and your use of technology around that.
Yeah,
so,
you guys are certainly right in the thick of all the fun change that's going on in the industry. Just a little bit about myself, maybe in between the lines of a bio. I'm a dad. I've got 3 kids and spent a lot of time with them. My oldest, unfortunately, is going into advertising. As much as I wanted him to be go be a doctor, go do something where you're not up late and weekends out on shoots and doing things. And I unfortunately or fortunately took him on a short TV shoot years ago, and that was my mistake. I'm not going to have a doctor in the family. But a little more about me. I've been at AT&T now for longer maybe than I expected, because I've moved from a lot of different companies in technology over the course of my career, both in the US, spent a lot of time in Asia and in Europe. But my roots are really kind of summarize my roots is in community engagement, working with people that today you would say, oh, that was an influencer program. Certainly nobody was using those terms back then, but that's kind of my bit, like really spend a lot of time with people who are using, developing, influencing others, and now an advertiser of some sort.
Yeah, that's interesting. We didn't talk about this before. Your longevity at AT&T, what is it, do you think, specifically about that role that has, afforded you the opportunity to stay there and maybe try new things and flex a lot of the muscles that you've had?
It's a really interesting company. The thing that attracted me back when I joined in 2013 was just a big mix of kind of gnarly problems that leadership was very open about and wanting to fix. And that's always attracted me. I'm less about, and this is probably good and bad, but less about the ones where it's, everything's on an easier path or on just a clear uphill path. I like kind of tearing things up and being able to figure things out. And as a company, it's been a lot of transformation. They've acquired quite a few companies, and then we'll talk a little bit about Xandr here today.
Yep.
Certainly on the entertainment side, done a lot of things, but they've also sold a lot of things and really rethought approaches. And so a lot of good people. Big company has all of its goods and bads, and it's been fun, and I very happy with what I'm doing.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine you find yourself at the center point of a lot of different types of businesses, which always keeps it quite interesting. right?
Yeah. Center point, center of the target, depending on the day, who's coming after you. But yeah, it makes life interesting. I think that's why a lot of us are in this industry, is it's constantly evolving.
That's right. So one of the things you and I talked about was, your creative background and and the idea that around creativity in general in advertising and in marketing, but the idea around personalization and the ways in which, technology is definitely advancing a lot of the ways, the opportunities around personalization. When you think about that from a creative standpoint, like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I really and this is going to sound generic, and then I'll try and be really specific, but it's always about the people that you're communicating with. And I say that even though that sounds generic, because it gets lost really fast. All of us would say, yeah, well, of course, but it gets lost really fast when in the heat of the moment, there's a financial target to hit, there's a new product or service or something that's being launched, and your management change is like, we need to go. Here's what's important about it. I want to see, bright, shiny, marketing and all the right targeting in place really quickly. And that is all very important, right? But it can really lose the real need by the person that you're trying to influence. And so the best marketing, the best public facing marketing in my career has started years prior to ever going to market with something on a website, a brochure, a video, whatever. And again, that might seem obvious, but it's really about understanding what the needs are of the audience, and not just from the perspective, I want to sell them this thing, therefore I'm going to find a way that, make my widget really, really fit for them, but being honest about how what you're creating needs to adapt in order to meet their need. I mean, I think the kind of work that you guys are doing is really interesting, because you have broad capabilities, but ultimately it's about crafting a solution for a partner. And so you're kind of inherently in that way. And then certainly you can provide scale right for all, but if you don't get it right for that partner that's there. And so in my career, being a lot in technology and products, you get really excited about the functionality and miss the individual. And you have the luxury, when I talk about doing those things years in advance, but that can happen in a very accelerated fashion. And I think a lot that's about to change for us in this world where, cookies are going to go away and we're going to lose our ability to be hyper personalized, is going to put even more pressure on us to understand the audience. We will no longer have what I kindly and rudely refer to as the crutch of marketing. And that can be, well, hey, I can manage my advertising or my marketing on a spreadsheet if I wanted to, and allow some technology, certainly cookies, to follow people around. And yes, you didn't buy those shoes on our website, but I'm certainly going to chase you all over the place. And we look at the numbers and you go, hey, well, that actually kind of works. But as individuals, we hate it. So as that goes away, right, that crutch goes away. We're going to need to be great. Marketing will be hyper personalized from a contextual standpoint. We won't have as much, certainly will be as much to be able to do that in tracking your very specific action. But I think as a human, I'm excited about that. As an advertiser, I'm excited about the challenge, but also the opportunity to be more human and respectful. Right place, right message at the right place at the right time. It will force that back on us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you consider the best advertising, the best communication that you've seen as a consumer, a lot of the times it feels personal, it feels personalized, but it's really just compelling, great creative work in a lot of ways. And we sort of, it resonates with all of us. And so it feels personal. And to be able to contextualize that more and to be able to think of audiences in in cohorts or in groups of people, is much more compelling and much more interesting than some sort of like tricky dynamic creative optimization type stuff that, is further down the spectrum of being perhaps, too personalized in most instances. So, we actually just hired a chief creative officer at Audigent for that very same idea, that balance of being data driven, where at the same time, ideas come at a creative level is really critical to the way that we think about, working with our clients.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And I think, a few years ago, people may have really scratched their head at, you guys making a decision like that. And I've seen other companies that are predominantly data led, or you would believe, your IP is this amazing algorithm or bots or way that you're compiling data sets. And that's what you're all about. But we've lost the humanity in all of that. And I think we all are tiring of it. Even though it's subconscious, we're tiring of it. And fortunately or unfortunately, from a privacy standpoint and the changes, what Apple's about to do any day now, what Google we know is going to do in early 2022, the crutch is gone. So can we go back and be, be more human in our approach? Like, there's going to be no other choice that we'll have.
Yeah, and I think you being a marketer, but thinking yourself from the consumer standpoint, how do you receive messages? Is critical to that human element of how you work as a marketer as well.
Yeah, that's right. I oftentimes will go back to an example. I've seen this repeated many times by one of my favorite brands, which is REI, does outdoor gear. And years ago, when I had moved to Seattle, I bought a tent from them. And I bought lots of things from them, but I bought a tent from them, and based upon the size of the tent and maybe my age or something else, but basically just by the size of the tent, it was clear it was like a family purchase, maybe had small children. Anyway, they sent me an email, thanking me for it and a couple of tips of how I could get more life out of it, which were super useful. And then it included a book, and it was best hikes for children in my area. I think there was a second book that was there as well that they didn't sell. That was a link over to Amazon that I bought. And that book I took everywhere, and it was super helpful for me. And it was the first purchase I made with them. Yep. And from that point, I was like, wow, like that helpful. They didn't need to come back to me and say, well, now you can buy all these Gore-Tex things and et cetera. Like, they were really relevant. And that's a really old example, but I know the way that not just email is done today, but you talk about DCO, and I'm just different parameters. I'm just, it's all based on other assumptions and data sets, and getting back to you're going to, like, your first party data, like, I have this relationship, I'm going to respect that relationship. And that's going to be a big part of what I do is going to be, is always been important, but it'll be more so in the coming year.
Yeah, thinking of marketing as providing a service, and providing a service to existing customers, new customers, or prospective customers. Thinking of that very service-oriented idea, like that REI example is a great one. Kind of really heartwarming. You think of a brand that you're going to have an affinity to for life. It's because they treated you as if they were a concierge at a nice hotel or something like that. They
absolutely
relationship, and it wasn't marketing necessarily. It was service through something like an email, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. How do you think about that? Are there examples of that with AT&T? How you guys are considering communication in that same path with customers?
We are. So you're a big company and been around for a long time, and every piece of communication has been, and particularly in the fields that I'm working in, we are going in and looking at whether it's a form on an old procurement site, or whether it's a contract notification for some older service to everything that's new. but really looking at every touch point and trying to make improvements. And I'm sure many of the people, maybe yourself, have had experiences with us, and over the years, I'm sure they've been varied, but it's absolutely at the center of everything that we're doing right now. Over the last several years, I've been part, with my team and a few others, been part of really building out I talk about assessing everything, about building both the tools, combining, connecting data sets, so that can be done at scale. And you can imagine a company that's been around for 100.5 years and a long time, that you've got different systems and from different places. And so it's a really important investment, because again, it's about that individual relationship. Every single one individually has to be just as important as the millions of others. And doing that at scale, you can scale it, but in some ways you can't. It's got to be perfect for each person.
Yeah, and everybody has their own relationship with AT&T, coming at it from different angles. They might be business customers. They might be coming in from the legacy DirecTV business.
That's right.
So different angles. Bit of a pivot here, but you guys, one of the tools that you guys have in your tool belt when you think about centralizing some of this is Xandr, which you spoke of. So with the acquisition of Xandr, you guys have a partnership there, that's interesting to understand how you use that. Any interesting use cases of how you work with them?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first off, it's been fun as a marketing geek to be close to the kind of reinventing the innovation that's going on, and having a sister company that close. And we're certainly Xandr's largest advertising client, and so we're using a lot of technology. We've been a couple of things I've been the most proud of, and these certainly are not like things that John, have done alone. I've got a partner who was actually on a Fireside chat a couple of weeks ago, I think, who referenced me, and I'll reference her.
It's a great duo. These, but that's the right way to think.
Exactly. But the things that we're doing with addressable television, and not just picking up some service, but actually helping to really fine tune that, to take a channel that's been the mass, really mass of all mass, and get really down to the household level with some segments, so that we're vastly more relevant. I hesitate to say personalized, because it's not based upon what you've done, but it's vastly more relevant, and the returns are there. Like, you're seeing it really work, and we're able to communicate things that you couldn't do in a larger mass channel, obviously. The other that's been really interesting, that's with having an advertising organization that close, but also working with companies like yourself, is what we're doing with account-based marketing, and particularly on the business side. And too often what's called business to business marketing, which is a term I absolutely hate, because it's not my business building to your business building. It's like it's human to human, connecting with each other. But we have done some really innovative things with combining data sets, always respecting the privacy and rules and everything there, but combining data sets so that we can communicate with specific companies that our sales teams are trying to connect with for particular reasons. But what we've been able to do on the advertising side is really watch the build out profiles of the decision makers in these companies. We're talking about thousands of companies. It's done at scale anonymously, but able to build out decision making trees for those companies, and then watch intent signals. Is this particular company or this group of companies, are they all of a sudden, is there a bunch of research being done on a technology, on a topic that we have a solution for? And so as those happen, then we're spinning up a whole journey of awareness, education, and eventually sort of consideration type of advertising that would help them along. It's kind of in some ways sequential in some ways, but really trying to answer the questions that they're asking, right? We only are doing those things when those people at those companies are interested in those topics. And as a result, and I can't share the numbers here, obviously, but as a result, we are seeing a huge uplift in closed sales that we're influencing. And we've done testing to validate, hey, are you actually making a lift? And the lift is significant. And at the end of the day, it's nothing more than what I talked about. It's having the right message at the right place at the right time, not because it's right for me, but it's right for the individuals that are searching for answers, that are trying to have an understanding, and just being there to say, hey, you're looking at different cybersecurity solutions for your big enterprise. Well, let us help you kind of on the things that be considered there, and ultimately, hey, maybe we can help you. But that's the approach. Very human, although done at a mass scale with data sets and lots of technology.
I mean, it's just an incredibly smart and sophisticated approach to doing something that, 10-ish years ago, basically you would have dropped copies of Wall Street Journal at people's offices, basically, to do that. But now at this point, you can really see content consumption patterns. You can look at things tied to, the IP address, basically fully anonymized, but look at the organization as a group and understand, as you noted, like what are surging topics, what's exciting to these people. Yeah. And then you can take, platform actually like Xander's Curate platform, and we can create highly contextual, like audiences of people to reach people in the moment directly around those types of content that are going to influence them too. So
you're spot on. Like, I could geek out about this all day long, and I don't even consider myself to be the data person. That was my partners here a couple of weeks ago, but we all live in it and we all geek out about it. And if this has been the way, in my opinion, to be doing really audience specific advertising and marketing, it has been this way, it's been available. But as the carpet gets pulled out here really soon, I think you're going to have a lot of phone calls to yourself and to others, because while things are changing, there still are really smart, scalable ways to reach people. It's going to be different, but it's still pretty impressive, the kinds of results that you can deliver.
Yeah, exactly. What about new channels? Any new emerging channels? I mean, I think the topic of the day here is future media and emerging channels. Anything
right
fun experimenting with?
So we get to experiment with a bunch. I feel I regularly kind of go, okay, you're like really blessed to be able to get access to most any kind of early, pre-beta tests that we want, which is pretty cool. Obviously can't do all of those. So I'll answer it a couple ways. Like, personally, I'm really interested in the resurgence of what I would call long form. And maybe the fact that, this year all of us have been, sequestered out away and, timed different, but a lot of longer form video formats, certainly audio and podcasting, but even print. And whether or not that's a little bit of a resurgence is, it's not just in my mind. I know others are looking at it as well. I hope that it stays more thoughtful, a little less sensational types of formats. I think we need that. I think we need to be more thoughtful versus, just the feed and what I glance and think is reality. But obviously, in terms of other platforms, I mentioned podcasting. I'll bring it up again. It's not new, right? It's been around for a long time, and then no one thought about it, and then it was kind of cool again. And for me, what makes it cool at this time is finally the ability to be able to measure it. It's been so scattered, or you just do it because, oh, it's kind of the thing, the place to be, and you would just pick a particular presenter, and you kind of go there, and based upon downloads maybe. It's gotten better, and I hope that remains with the changes coming. So that one's been really interesting.
Well, I think that it could be similar to CTV in that it's driven by the scale that's finally been able to be achieved, and how cohesive you can now buy it. Now you can map audiences together. You can buy it at scale. You can look at granular aspects to be able to buy it potentially, and you can also do really sophisticated creative along with it. So it becomes a really interesting period. And when you think of something like podcasts, I mean, such an intimate medium, basically, to sort of have it in your ears, and you feel like the people that are actually hosting it. I have some friends that run one called Adlandia for our industry. That's a really interesting one for people that I'll plug here. But I think that you're right. Podcast is certainly an interesting format to play with.
Yeah. And then we're looking at quite a few others. I'm sure that Clubhouse has been mentioned in every fireside chat for months now, and it's super interesting. I don't know where the advertisers come in, and it's the same for other platforms. And this goes into what I'm excited about in the changes is we all will need to be more relevant. The kind of DCO mentality that I'm sure that people here certainly are using, those who are listening are using DCO, but you're here probably because you know that there's other ways of doing things. So I don't want to pick on anyone who's listening, but speaking generically, it's that's the wrong approach, right? It needs to be, what you're going to do on TikTok might be through an influencer, or it might be through the influencer that you create. That could be an employee. It could be somebody that you put some media weight behind. There's lots of ways of going about it, but however you go about it, to do it thoughtfully, and it's for that platform and then the particular audiences that you're trying to communicate with. So it's a really fun time to be a marketer.
Yeah, this is actually asked within the last panel, but I don't know if you heard, like, is there a tipping point, like with TikTok, for example, in your case, where it goes beyond just being on your radar, but you understand, okay, we should put some resources behind it, and are there, or how do you consider that as a marketer?
Yeah, I know how I consider it, and how we consider it as a company will vary. So I'll focus more on me. It's listening more, right? Observing more initially, and then can I measure some activity there? And measurement isn't the hard gate that must be there. But if I don't have some way to measure, I have a hard time saying $1 invested here is going to give me a better return than $1 invested somewhere else.
Yep.
And that will very much limit your ability to move on. And we've seen it with other platforms. I remember seeing it, with Snap, and where it was like, hey, we need a few more things in order to try and blow this out. And then we're going to blow it out and see what actually occurs. And then without a measurement, then I can go, hey, is my approach wrong? Is the way I'm targeting wrong? And there's so many questions you can ask, but you just, without those tools, you're winging it, which is fun, and we should all do a certain amount of, but that measurement is a really important gate.
Yeah, that measurement, that learning, like, what can you draw out of it beyond just the experience of having run marketing on it or through it? And if you consider kind of the walled gardens comparatively, if you're going to be diversifying dollars, either away or towards other platforms potentially, what are you able to get out of it from an insights and measurement standpoint? Like, how do you balance targetability versus like the creative impact that you can have potentially on another platform that's interesting?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you have a a percentage of your budget that's really about experimentation, where you can go in places where things aren't really clear. But we just need to be careful that we don't play into the stereotype of marketing just doing the cool, flashy things, and there's no substance. We have to have that substance. And so, as you look at new platforms, it doesn't mean that we're going to be pulling dollars that I can measure, returns that I can measure on some of the walled gardens that people love to hate, because there are returns. But it'd be silly not to be out experimenting and realizing, okay, that company's spending a lot of time with the federal government in multiple countries. We should probably be looking at something else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good segue to a question that just arose from the audience here. So, how about corporate purpose? When you think about your role, is there a way in which corporate purpose and what AT&T is doing, what you can do as a corporate entity, kind of factors into the way that you think about marketing?
I think that's an awesome question, because as I talk about being human, it's not just talking to someone in a way or answering their questions and to be human, right? People need to understand about what you stand for and who you are. And that's more than just the things you sell. It's why you create them. It's how you take care of your employees. It's the impact that you have in the world around you. And so it is a significant part of what makes AT&T what it is. I happen to be in the central marketing organization, where we are very, very focused on what we would like the brand to stand for. And nobody is in denial that brands, ultimately the definition of a brand is not what the brand says, it's what people say. Yeah. And so constantly listening to that and adjusting and being, just incessantly customer focused and doing everything we can to improve on all the touch points I talked about earlier is really important. But then as a company with hundreds of thousands of employees, what are the things we stand for? And with that many employees, you're going to have people from, all walks of life and all backgrounds. So you'll see us involved in all those things. Broadly, diversity and inclusion, you have to have both, are super key. This last year, we released a report that had more detail than what you'll see most companies, that showed what diversity looks like at various companies at different management levels, to be very transparent. Not to say that we were perfect, not at all, but to be very clear about where we are. And in some measures, we're ahead of our industry, but no one would say that's perfect. What we're saying is it is critical, and that we're committed to being, to representing the types of diverse communities that we, are blessed to be able to serve as to call customers.
Yeah, I think you have a particularly unique subset of customers. I mean, it's a vast, group of customers, but you have so many interesting ways to connect with them. The technologies, the entertainment, sort of like the ways in which you, as a company, can speak to your customers. That affords you that opportunity to be really empathetic marketer too, and to really listen to them through what channels you can as well.
Yep.
Another question from the audience here. How should quote unquote older brands gracefully enter new technology spaces?
Interesting question. So I think I'd answer it two ways. Gracefully, it sounds like there's probably some history behind that. Maybe the person's asking a question about how do you evolve maybe ways that people have done things for a long time.
Well, I think they give examples to give you additional examples such as TikTok esports as well. So it's about the brand being older, as well as potentially maybe the consumers are younger. How do you speak to younger audiences on younger audiences' terms potentially in a way that doesn't feel forced?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I worked at a company that wanted to make what we felt like was a pretty big pivot away from what had been their core. And everyone, the board, current leadership, across everyone was aligned on where the company needed to go. But it was the debate was really about how you got there. And my role at the time in marketing, particularly owning our social channels where we had really healthy communities, like our base was there and active, and we were super engaged with them, to the point where we were out, like we would do regular meetups, with our top customers and fans. They'd get access to things before journalists and analysts would. Like, they were very much part of the process. We wanted their feedback. So here we are wanting to make this pivot. So you've been here, you want to make a pivot, and we brought them along, both our customers, and then internally we brought them along so they felt that they were still part of it while we added a segment or two to the mix. And then internally it was, hey, I know where you want to go. Here's a path for the next year, and here are the checkpoints that we're going to come in and just make sure that we don't need more time, or that we don't need to go and adjust. Even the oldest brands, or people that have grown up in a company and like have maybe one way or what seemingly a fixed way of doing things, like, bringing them a path to go and test and prove it works. It still is uncomfortable, but it can work, and you can do it without having to damage current relationships. And then I think the steps along the way, and I'm going back to where we were with this company, is the path we ended up taking was a little bit different. And that was how it should have been. I probably wouldn't have articulated initially. I was like, here's the path, we're going to do it. It's going to be all this time. And then we're like, well, we're moving this way and that way. But it was respected because we were coming back in and using some data and a lot of customer verbatims to guide leadership on that pivot.
Yeah, I think you want to find out where you have permission to go as a brand, and where, you've talked a lot about the idea of marketing as a kind of a service to your clients. Like, if you think of some of these different platforms, these different areas that might be new, it's like, what does AT&T mean to these either communities or, the people within them, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Testing and communicating seems like the right approach. Any brands that you particularly look up to in the media space? You noted REI, I think, is that great initial anecdote. Anyone more contemporary that you see that, when it's talking about doing exciting things in emerging spaces, that you think is doing a good job?
As somebody who likes brands with challenges, I'm really interested in what some of the established brands are doing. Looking at GM right now is really interesting, what they're doing with Cadillac and Hummer, in moving to all electric vehicles. And not just because they've got sort of flashy emotional ads, but I'm just fascinated on how you pivot from kind of your grandparents' big Cadillac, huge vehicle, right, to the very much technology first, green initiatives. It's just a really interesting time to see those brands pivot. And I'm sure there are lots of other examples, but you're talking about industries that have been a certain way for a long time. If you wanted to make changes in automotive, it was a decade in the planning, huge investments to looking at a whole new, whole new technologies, but then looking at your car kind of in the same way that you look at a phone and like, let's launch it, let's update software updates. And certainly Tesla has certainly helped open that door. And they'll be, very, very interesting, but these other companies are with scale, going to be really fun to keep watching.
Yeah, the challenge of having to actually create the vehicles and the timeline that goes into production and the research and everything along with the challenges of marketing makes it a particularly exciting marketing challenge in how you communicate to your audiences as well.
Absolutely.
My son is clamoring for my attention right now.
That's great. You should have him join us. That's my policy for this new world. It's like family. Come on in and give a point of view. So. Yeah, we've had one person who works for me, a 6-year-old daughter comes in and comments on advertising, and it's great. And then when he leaves his computer, she jumps up and starts talking to us. So it's wonderful.
Yep.
Well, guys, embracing the change.
Thanks so much for the great session. So the bane of my existence working from home have been my dogs, who are fortunately at the groomer right now. So I have an issue, but they love barking. So great session.
They're at the spa, Marty. I think it's referred to as the spa for them.
Yeah, spa, right? Puppy spa. So a couple of great things. First of all, John, besides you owning our household, both from a phone and an internet standpoint, we're customers, but love REI, have had a very good personal experience. I can see you're using your tent by all those wonderful photographs you have in the background, which I'm assuming were taken while using.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So kudos to you. It's great family time. We love it. We actually love camping. Dynamic creative also, I think, in the personalization. It's funny. I worked at a company a couple of years ago that was really kind of trying to really dive into dynamic creative. A couple of things. We found that brands weren't yet ready for it yet, but the technology also hasn't really gotten there yet. We here at Quantcast have been able to figure some of that out, but it's more on a one-off basis. So I don't think anybody's really at scale figured that out. But and then so to answer your question though, Ted, on the first digital ad, do you know who sold that first digital ad?